All right, well, this is meant to be pretty informal just to see where everyone's at. Um, so I think I'll let Matt go ahead, and since he's been I'm recognizing faces now with Slack names and some emails and stuff, but I'll let Matt sort of take the show since he's our director extraordinaire.
Cool. Thanks, David. Hope everybody's doing okay. Thank you all for your work so far. This has been great. As just a sort of generalized update for folks, the kind of highest priority forms that we've had are various family law forms for getting restraining orders and various housing law forms for getting what are called temporary restraining orders, getting a court to do a thing as opposed to award someone money. And those are primarily meant for situations where, say, someone's bathroom roof is caved in because of a leaky pipe, or their unit is otherwise uninhabitable. I'm not a housing lawyer, so I missed that one up. It looks like the majority of those forms, I think all those forms actually, either are in the process of being labeled or have been labeled and are going through the quality check process, which is really, really great. So for you, David, I think too, you had mentioned to me on a separate email that it looks like we might need some more forms, and I think that's absolutely right. So I think people have been DMing me directly with questions on Slack. I was just on a Zoom meeting before this, kind of walking people through the Trello process, through the form and field labeling process. Quentin and David have been great in terms of troubleshooting some of the technology issues that have come up with that. We're coming up with a workflow. So don't hesitate to ask me questions. And I think what we'll do today is the things I have on my agenda are definitely, we want to have time for questions and suggestions and people who are hitting bottlenecks. I want to give Kate Berry, who's a family law attorney, and if Caroline is here, time to connect with the people who are working on the family law forms to see if maybe we can do some stuff ahead of time to make sure those forms go together properly. Because what I've learned since the last time we talked is that there's no such thing as a 209A form. It's more of a packet of forms. And then maybe go a little bit through some of the some of the solutions we've had for the PDF field labeling process for folks who have been having issues with that, because a couple of issues have come up there, and we figured out ways, or rather Quentin has figured out ways, and David to resolve them. Am I missing anything, David?
That sounds right. I think we want to, though, keep this meeting as short as possible, since it's well, I guess the other thing is we want to front load with stuff for everyone, and if people want to drop out and have more pressing stuff to work on, they can do that. This is just meant to be like a touch base.
Perfect. So that's it. I agree. And so first of all, does anyone on the call have issues that they want to bring up? Do you have questions? Have you hit bottlenecks? Do you have suggestions for how to make things better?
Also, if people want to, this is a perfect time to say hi, like I'm the little text you've been talking to.
Yeah.
Maybe Matt, I can go. This is Tyler Shannon calling in.
Yeah, that would be great.
And waving. I've been working predominantly on the housing temporary restraining order forms. And something that Matt and I worked through yesterday was some of the field labeling issues, and we identified the fact that the Form 15 is in fact 4 separate, separately filed forms. I think 2 are relevant to tenants and 2 are filed by the court. And so we've broken the Form 15 into 4 separate forms. 3 have moved through the pipeline and have gone through or are currently going through the quality check. But I'm stuck on one of them, which is the order of notice. And so I think I'm just looking for a little advice on how to process a few of the fields in that form. It's not intended for a tenant to fill out. It's intended for a clerk of the court to fill out. So.
Oh, okay. If the clerk court is going to fill it out, then we may not want to do it. My memory is for an order of notice, there is a part where the judge might ask you to pre-fill most of it, and you basically say what the order that you want is.
Yeah, go ahead, Quentin. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think this would be a good place to grab in another of our volunteers, Gordon Shaw, who's at Community Legal Aid in Worcester, who said he'd help with subject matter questions, and he does housing law.
And Quentin, do you know if Gordon's on the Slack? Would it be better to do via email?
I think email would be the first way to reach out with him, and then we could probably encourage him to join the Slack for that kind of chat.
So Tyler, if I DM you, you have my email. It should be posted. It should be pinned in the channel. Would you mind emailing? I actually know Gordon vaguely. So would you mind just sort of emailing me a short version of your question? I'll forward it along to him and kind of introduce the two of you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Perfect. So thank you, Tyler, for monitoring exactly what this meeting is for, modeling rather. Anybody else have any issues, questions, things they need help with?
Henry here. This might be a pretty simple question, but I'm seeing a lot of differences in how we're saving the documents once they're labeled. So I'm wondering if there's any conventions we have for how the names we want to save them, for how it goes further down the line to organize everything.
And Henry, just to be clear, you're saying in terms of how the actual like files are named, right?
File is, yeah. And that might not matter, I don't know.
No, I think that's a great idea. I think if I don't have bandwidth to do this right now, but if I think like as long as we have a convention, it works. Would you mind just like coming up with different suffixes for each point, DMing them to me, and then I'll put them in the GitHub?
Sure, sounds good.
Great, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, hi, it's Maeve here. If we're having a problem with a specific form in terms of getting it to the point where it's ready to have the fields labeled, who should we go to about that? I'm just struggling with the, what am I working on? It's a harassment form. And I've labeled the fields and then I saved it, and now it seems to be not showing up. And it took me to like the Adobe Lifecycle form. I just don't know, if we're having issues like that, is there somebody that we can go to? I mean, it's like, are you the person? I feel like you're the person for everything at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to take an initial crack at it. Full transparency, I'm not nearly I'm semi-technical at best, so I'm not as technical as Quentin or as David, and I don't have a ton of experience with like rejiggering PDF fields, but I'm happy to take a crack at it, and then David, if you or Quentin have any suggestions, is there anybody on the DocAssemble channel I might go to with these questions so as to not bother you guys?
The one thing I can think of is, I don't know how much time he has, but Scott from Community Lawyer offered some of his expertise. I know he's experienced with using Adobe Acrobat. So he might be a possible resource for that kind of troubleshooting.
Yeah, Scott's in the Slack. And then also, I want to say, like, to the extent that people have problems, they can also just put them out generally. Everything doesn't have to go through Matt. He has everything can go through Matt, and he's great at coordinating it. But you can just put things in the general channel, and then hopefully people can glom on and find answers that way too.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, David. I know, like, I'm actually a new adoptee to Slack, and so it takes personally for me, it's taken some getting used to kind of just like putting things out into the ether, in part because it can be embarrassing, or it can feel embarrassing, but that it's very much the culture. Everyone here is super nice. And also a ton of people have been prefacing all their questions to me with like, is this a dumb question? I've not gotten a single dumb question yet. 9 out of 10 of them have been like, oh, I don't know the answer to that. I have to figure that out. So don't worry.
Yeah, to be clear, none of us know the answers to how exactly this is all supposed to work because we're all figuring it out right now. So we're all in the same boat.
Exactly.
Just another thing, sorry, that we've dealt with, I think you and Matt and I, was the issues of the actual field labels. And I think Liz Getzoff, she's on the call now, she was also talking to me about that because we were having a problem where the labels were all different over 3 different versions. I'm not too sure where we actually stand on that at the moment. I know Quentin spoke to the issue yesterday and said that it wasn't actually an issue. It's just something that people need to be aware of. And then Liz contacted me today saying that there was yet another automatically generated set of labels on a document that I'd processed. So I'm not too sure where we're standing with that.
So
Go ahead, Quentin.
I'll just do like a really quick summary. So I think what happened is the Documate PDF renamer tool is not a validation tool we can use just yet. And that was, I think, where the problem was lying. So that actually does automatically rename all of the fields. It gives you the option to save them. It doesn't automatically rename them, but it changes all of the names, so you can't really use it to check what the existing names are. And that's actually something that Dorna, the CEO of Documate, is working on us. She assigned some of her engineers to fix that so we can use it for that purpose. It's not ready yet. Hopefully it will be ready for that. Even by the end of the day, I think is not too unrealistic.
But to be clear, it's good for doing the first edit. It's just you can't check it. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, it's good for the first edit. It will be great for the second edit. The one other thing about Documate that I forgot until we started doing this is you can't add a digital signature field. So depending on how long the form is, it might make sense for someone who has Acrobat to do that in actual Acrobat, or you might go through and do most of it and then just pass it off to someone with Acrobat to add the signature if you're doing it a paired programming way.
Yeah, and I think high level, if you're doing either the first two steps, which are renaming the fields or the quality check, and you don't have Adobe Acrobat Pro, contact me first so I can walk you through some things to not do that will trip you up, because I led some people down the garden path, or put it out to the channel because people are becoming masters on that now too. Anything else? Any other questions?
So really, this is just a check-in so we can get some FaceTime and stuff. So if there aren't other questions, we can either do some more content stuff for people who want to stick around for that, or Matt can do his training. I like the idea of having Kate and folks talk, but I really think they want to connect with whoever's working on those things. So maybe that's an in Slack thing.
I agree, David. And Kate actually just shared her contact information in the channel. And I know Caroline is all over the Slack too. And they're both incredible resources. So I recommend that everybody who's working on, especially the labeling portion of the forms for the family law, which is the 209A and 258E, basically anything that doesn't have the word housing in it right now. If you have doubts about whether you're working on a family law form, I know enough family law to figure that out for you. So you can send that to me or send it to the channel. You should all just check in, and sorry, Kate, in advance. You should all just check in with Kate so that she can take a high-level look at what you're doing and make sure that we're not completely messing everything up. That's it. I as David said, I am going to do a brief DocAssemble training. But we have one more minute if anybody else has questions or thoughts. Cool.
I have
Looks like Tyler had one.
One final thought, and Matt, you and I spoke about this yesterday. In cases where there's a field for a plaintiff and a name, should we be using the plaintiff field name or the username field name?
So what we're going to do in the back end for that, Tyler, is we'll ask a question that says, are you the plaintiff? Are you the defendant? So you can just use the person's name for when it asks for their name, and where it asks for the plaintiff, just put in the name of the plaintiff. Just put in the variable name plaintiff. We'll do that on the back end for every form.
So we should never have a field, Quentin, that's labeled username.
Username would exist if it actually asked the person to put in their name. If it asks for your name or party's name, or
where it specifically says your name,
something like that.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
But if it says plaintiff name, the label should be plaintiff.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So that was something where we were trying to guess what the forms would look like before we saw them. Does it say like plaintiff name and then say plaintiff address underneath?
Let me check.
I
seeing
think
a head
so.
shake.
Like it asks for more follow-up about the plaintiff. It doesn't just say, it's not just the plaintiff name like in the caption of the case, like where it says plaintiff versus defendant.
There's that at the top, but then like there's name of plaintiff in item 1 of the verified complaint and motions form.
Okay. So for
That's
that
helpful.
example, which is I think is great for us to clarify, this only can be the person who's filling out the form is always going to be the plaintiff. So we could put in username for that example.
One question, Quentin. What if someone else is filling out the form for in those circumstances?
Like a different person on behalf of the plaintiff?
Yeah.
I think we're going to have instructions that say, fill this out as if you are the person who is the form is for.
But at this stage, this is definitely one of those things that if you have doubts in a particular instance, you can put it out to the channel, because hopefully we'll have some subject matter experts lurking there, or at least some lawyers lurking there who will be able to help you with this. And I think this is a great illustration of how like there's not really a right answer and we're all figuring it out as we go along.
Yeah, so when someone was coming in and cleaning up that form, for example, they would see, oh, it's a complaint. It's always the plaintiff. We wouldn't bother to ask somebody, are you the plaintiff or the defendant? Because it only makes sense for them to be the plaintiff. And we would just override that kind of default question we had. But that's okay for that not to be just right at this stage. We can fix that a little bit later down the line.
Easy.
Okay.
Go ahead, David.
I was just going to try to move us on. So you can do that.
Okay, then if anybody, just to respect everyone's time, if anybody has any other questions, comments, concerns, either put them out in the channel, DM me, DM David. Try to leave Quentin alone. He's coding. We need his mind. And if anybody's interested, I'm going to do a very brief, probably like 10 minutes training on DocAssemble, and the target audience for this is people who know little to no coding and who might be interested in helping a little bit later on in the process editing the default text of the questions that gets spit out by the wizard. All right, missing anything there, David? Okay, great, cool, got the thumbs up.